Listen, let me ask you this. Could you imagine letting somebody borrow your car and then them turn around and reporting it stolen when you go to drive it? That's exactly what Kawhi Leonard of the Toronto Raptors alleges happened to him after Nike sent him a cease and desist letter for a logo that he says that he only temporarily let them use. Welcome to the Legal Tea. I am your host, brand attorney LaKanya Murray, owner of the Mark IP Solutions, where we help clients throughout the United States own their genius by protecting their brand through trademarks, copyrights, and contracts. We got a good one for you today, so let's get started. Today's episode is a prime example of one, why you should not wait to register your intellectual property, and two, why you should always have an attorney review your contracts. So listen, I just told you that Kawhi Leonard of the Toronto Raptors, who by the way is on fire during these NBA Finals, they're going into Game 6 tonight, and I think he's averaging like 30 points a game. Okay then, we see you. So he's on fire tonight. In 2014, he won Most Valuable Player after the NBA Finals was complete. In 2011, Leonard signed an endorsement deal with Nike, and that deal lasted from, I think, October 1st, 2011, and ended at the end of September of last year. And during that agreement, that's where this controversy stems from, right? So, according to Leonard, before he even went pro, while he was still in college, he started kind of designing his logo, he saw himself as a name branded player with endorsement deals. So he started working on his logo. He was always known for having huge hands. My hands aren't that big, but having huge hands. So he took and traced his hand like we kind of do when we're in second grade to make the turkey for Thanksgiving. But he drew his hand, and with the fingers, he had the fingers, they were an extension of his initials. So the fingers, one went into a K, one went to an L, and then he made another finger the number 2, which has always been his basketball number. So he came into the league with this prototype of his logo. And then he enters into this agreement with Nike in 2011, and they go back and forth about the logo and how it should look. And they gave him some suggestions. He said no, and they finally landed on an agreement of, okay, this is the logo that you can put on your merchandise. And he says they entered the agreement with the understanding that he owned the intellectual property to it, that he owned the intellectual property to it, that they wouldn't file a copyright to it, and he would be able to use that logo on non-Nike merchandise. That's the agreement that he thought that they had. Apparently that wasn't true, because when that contract ended in 2018, he went and signed another endorsement deal with New Balance, and when he attempted to use his logo, he was sent a cease and desist letter, and that's when he learned that Nike had filed a copyright for his logo. Wow, right? Wow. And mind you, he just found that out about Nike, but in 2017, he filed for a trademark for that logo, which has been approved for a notice of allowance, which means that when he filed the application, he said, hey, I'm not using this mark in commerce yet, but I plan on using it in commerce. And so the USPTO was like, yes, okay, great. We don't see any conflicts or anything wrong with your application. Your application will be approved as long as you begin using it in commerce and you give us proof that you're doing that. So that's where we're in right now. He's in that waiting phase for his official certificate of approval, because he hasn't submitted proof that he's actually using the mark in commerce. And I think this is one of the reasons why, because he can't use it in commerce if he's receiving cease and desist letters from Nike. So after he received the cease and desist letter, what did he do? He filed a lawsuit. He said that Nike committed fraud by filing their copyright application, and they failed to list him as the author of that work. So let's talk about copyrights today. Today we're going to talk about copyrights and a little bit about contracts, not much, but really about copyrights. So copyrights protect original works that are in a fixed, tangible form. So original means that it is from the person that's creating it from their own imagination. That's what we mean by original. And in fixed, tangible form means that it's out of their mind and it's something that we can touch, we can hear, we can see. Something of that nature. It can't just be a thought. It has to be something tangible that you can touch, hear, or see. Okay? And when the copyright owner, the reason that you want to have your copyright, because it gives you, the owner, rights or exclusive rights to do certain things. And one of those things is to create derivatives of that work. And a derivative is simply a variation. For example, if you draw a design, right? You have the right to draw that design. You have a right to take a picture of that design. You have a right to turn that design into some type of animation. You have the right to do all those things because it is your original work. So that's what we mean by derivative. And so the copyright owner has the exclusive right to create derivatives of their work. And so that's where we kind of are right there. What does that really mean, that derivative of that work? In this case, Leonard has so many challenges. Well, the main challenge he has to come up over is this whole concept of the derivative. So as the copyright owner, he has the exclusive right to create derivatives, which means that if someone creates a derivative without his authorization, that is copyright infringement, and that work cannot be protected by copyrights if it's unauthorized, meaning that he didn't give them permission. But that's not the case. Even in his lawsuit, he says that he gave them permission to make the changes. They sent him over some changes. He would deny them, send them over, he would deny them, and then they finally sent something over that he said, okay, this is something that I can agree with. This is something that I would like to represent my brand. So they agreed to it, and Nike made those changes. And this is where it gets murky for Leonard. Even though the unauthorized use the unauthorized creation of a derivative is copyright infringement, once the copyright owner gives a third party permission to make changes or to create a variation of their work, then they risk the chance of losing ownership of that new creation. If the courts find that that variation or that new creation has just a very minimal level of creativity, then that new work, that derivative, can be protected by copyrights, and the person that created that derivative will own that copyright. Did all that make sense? I know it's a lot. So I'm going to say it again. If you create a work, let's say you take your logo to a graphic designer and you want them to improve it, right? So you take it to them and you have your copyright in that original work. Now they've made the changes that you agree that they can make. When they make those changes, now they are the owner of the changes that was made, of the new improved logo. So while you still have copyright ownership of the old logo, they now have ownership of this new and improved logo, which is why it's important to have contracts when you're working with people. And even like, I would like to know what this endorsement contract between Leonard and Nike said. I'm sure that it has some sort of intellectual property clause in there, but I'm not sure. According to him, there was never any written agreement as related to the intellectual property. There was just a mutual understanding. Even so, he said he even went so far to point out that when people were making infringing on the merchandise by making knockoffs, is what I'm trying to say. When they were making knockoffs of the merchandise, they went to Nike to enforce the rights, and Nike was like, "Oh no, that's not us. We can't. Well, that's not us. You handle that. You handle that." So it's really interesting to find out that right at the end of this endorsement deal, Nike goes and files this copyright, which they might very well be authorized to do depending on what the new work looks like compared to the old work, if there was any type of level of creativity to it with the changes, and if there was no written agreement, which he already says that there's no written agreement. So as it comes to contracts, this is why it's important as business owners, when you're entering into agreements, that you have an attorney review your contract. Sure, you can read through it and you can understand what's in there, right? Maybe you can. But what you don't know is what's missing in there. You don't know what you should be looking for, what you should be considering when you're reviewing this contract. And a lot of times, I work with very intelligent people who they just want to know, what does this mean for me? What can I do and what can't I do? And they want it very clear without any misunderstandings. That's why you want a contract. Have an attorney review your contract. Another thing you want to do as a business owner is don't wait to register your intellectual property. One of the things I wish Kawhi would have did was to register his copyright. And to be clear, Nike's copyright does not void his original copyright. So what it appears to me, it seems like he had this logo. He came in with the logo. They agreed on changes, and now he's looking to register as a trademark and use the revised logo. That's what's not clear because there weren't any images included with the complaint, so I'm not able to compare what Nike registered with what Leonard submitted as the original logo. I wish I had that because that would help me analyze the situation better, but I don't. But the revised logo that Nike has does not void Leonard's original logo. That's just a matter of fact. They both have their copyright interest in the work. One of the things I wish he would have did was to register that work at that time, just so there wasn't any confusion about when he created the logo and who was the author of the logo, the original logo at all. And as one of the things as I was looking at this story, I heard a commentator, and I can't remember what commentator it was and what channel it was, but they were basically saying, like, why is he filing this lawsuit? Who does he think he is? Is he going to be one of those players that brands can, that franchises can build brands around? Like, why is he even trying to protect his intellectual property? And here's the thing to that. You don't wait until you make it to protect your intellectual property. You protect your intellectual property when you're starting off so that when you do make it, you don't have any problems. You don't have any, you know that you own this, so when you enter into these agreements, you don't have to worry about whether or not this intellectual property belongs to you or somebody else. And it's a negotiating too. Like, I know that he's thinking about trading, and that team that he's looking about going to is now in negotiations with Nike to purchase the rights to the logo, which is crazy. Like, you're having a conversation about something this man created, something that represents this man, and he's not even a part of the conversation because he doesn't own it. You got to be a part of the conversation. You have to own your genius. That's why I have this shirt. This is our tagline: own your genius. You have to own your genius. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor, type "own your genius" in the comments if you understand the importance of owning the things that you create, your intellectual property. Type "own your genius" in the comments. Okay, so every episode we have our top 3 takeaways. What are the top 3 takeaways from today's episode? Let's think about it. I would say 1, like I just said, don't wait to register your work. If you create something, go ahead and protect it. Go ahead and protect it. 2, you have to know intellectual property in order to play the game. If you're going in there and you want to be a brand ambassador, you want to have endorsement deals and things of that nature, you need to know what you can and cannot do. And the only way to do that is have a conversation with the other party and then have that conversation put in writing. So if he thought that the derivative of that work was going to be his and Nike wasn't going to register that copyright and that he was going to be able to use it on non-Nike merchandise, he should have put all that in writing. And a company like Nike doesn't move forward with their intentions without putting it in writing. We already know because they know what the deal is. If it's not in writing, it doesn't happen. It's kind of like me and my calendar. If it's not on my calendar, it's not going to happen. So that's number 2. You want to make sure that you use written agreements when you're working with other parties. And 3, you want to have a basic understanding of intellectual property. A basic understanding of intellectual property. Even if you're working with an attorney, you want to be able to say, oh, okay, I created this, but it's a derivative, so at least be able to ask your attorney, how does that work? What do I need to do to protect myself? You have to be aware of those type of things to even know what questions to pose to your attorney. All right. So again, if you found this information useful, type up "own your genius" in the comments. If you understand the importance of owning your intellectual property, put a "own your genius" in the comments. And make sure you subscribe to our channel so you can catch our next video.